Hey, what's up, y'all? All right, let's go hop right into it. Eugenics and Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger. Let's get it. Hold on. Oh, fuck it.
Mrs. Margaret Slee, president of America's Planned Parenthood Federation, maintains that European women should stop having babies for the next 10 years.
But Mrs. Slee, in this country, having babies is the only thing left which is both unrationed and untaxed. Do you think we really ought to stop?
Well, I suppose a subject like that.
Wait a minute, I have a question. Hold on. Let me chat GPT it. First question. Was Margaret Sanger part of the Klan? She did not join the Ku Klux Klan. What actually happened in her autobiography, she speaks at meetings of the women of the Ku Klux Klan in New Jersey in 1929. She wrote found the experience strange and disturbed, but did not endorse the Klan. Okay, so that's wrong. All right, so let's keep going.
It is really so personal that it's entirely up to the parents to decide. But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies.
The term eugenics is basically...
Also, this kills the whole video right now. Race and eugenics controversy. Sanger did not support eugenics, a popular but not discredited belief in the early 1920th century about improving the human genetic pool. Her vision of eugenics focused more on preventing poverty and disease than race, but it has been criticized for being a racially incentivized enlistment.
A set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. Historically, by excluding people and groups judged to be inferior and promoting those judged to be superior. There have been various applications of eugenics, perhaps the most famous being the Germans before and during World War II, which was condemned by the Nuremberg war crimes trials. But the Germans did not invent eugenics. In fact, they were inspired by the founder of the taxpayer-funded Planned Parenthood. The truth behind the genesis of that organization and its founder are much darker than most Americans realize. Who was the real Margaret Sanger? Why was she heralded by the Third Reich as the greatest socialist in America?
That's true too. She was heralded. Let's keep checking, guys. Let's fact check. Was she held by the Third Reich as the greatest eugenics in America? It says no. No, they didn't praise her. Yes, focus on preventing poverty and illness through volunteering. Yes, focus on racial purity. So she was aimed at, oh wow, this is actually definitely deep.
Why do modern Democrats who claim to support the African American population justify presenting her as a cultural icon? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
I'm done spending an obscene amount of money on cake editors. Done.
In 1879 in Corning, New York. She is an icon to left-wing groups due to her founding of Planned Parenthood in October 1916 with her sister Ethel Byrne and Fanny Amendel, which was the first birth control clinic in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. 9 days later, the police raided the clinic and arrested all the people involved for promoting birth control, which was illegal. Sanger refused to pay the fine and spent 30 days in jail. She then traveled the country preaching her concepts. Sanger then founded the American Birth Control League in 1921. Sanger also endorsed the 1927 decision Buck v. Bell, in which the Supreme Court ruled that states could forcibly sterilize people deemed unfit without their consent and sometimes without their knowledge. This American law would be the major defense at Nuremberg for the Nazi defendants who were doctors practicing Sanger's methods, and many would be found not guilty as a result of this defense. In 1939, Sanger began what was called the Negro Project, alongside black leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Reverend Adam Clayton Powell. This was the plan to have black doctors performing on black patients, to perpetuate the sterilization of blacks who were deemed inferior, as many black patients were suspicious of white doctors. Following upon Sanger's eugenics platform, disguised as giving women access to birth control, the ABCL became Planned Parenthood Federation of America in 1942, after birth control was no longer considered illegal, at least among married couples. During this period,
this video is like completely off, man. Listen to this. Yes, Margaret Sanger did support eugenics, but it's important to understand the context and how the version of eugenics differs from what people often think today, especially compared to the Nazi eugenics, okay? So, what kind of eugenics did she support? Sanger believed in voluntary eugenics, not coercive or racially violent forms. She advocated that birth control as a way to prevent the suffering and causing by poverty, disease, and unwanted pregnancies. She thought limiting reproduction among those with several hereditary illnesses or extreme poverty could improve society. Sanger emphasized choice in education rather than forced sterilization or government control. She said, more children from the fit, less from the unfit, that is chief issue of the birth control. Yes, that language is harsh by today's standards and was part of the broader eugenics movement. The problematic belief. She used terms like feeble-minded and unfit, which were common in the eugenics movement and are now seen as offensive and discriminatory. But what she didn't support, here's the thing. She did not support Nazi-style racial eugenics, genocide, or forced sterilizations on racially biased. She did not approve that. There's no evidence that she wanted to eliminate racial minorities or that she founded Planned Parenthood for the purpose. Through these claims are sometimes made by her critics, right? So basically, because she wanted women to have, and like I'm reading more and more, women to have the right to reproductive systems. Like what the right now is doing is trying to take that and go like, no, she wanted to eliminate this for that reason. And I think what the Nazis did was they heard what she was trying to say, the improvement of society, and they took it as in every other group is inferior besides the German people. So it is similar, but there's differences. So it's like it's really being misconstrued in this video to a degree. It really is.
Sanger had critics and supporters. The supporters even today claim that she condemned abortion, arguing that it would not be needed if every woman had access to birth control. What they leave out is that Sanger only opposed abortions if that meant not producing the best, healthiest, most intelligent from Caucasian couples. For blacks, Jews, and brown-skinned people, as well as low IQ white people and those with birth defects, they were not to be allowed. This was what the Nazis adopted. Ironically, in 1966, Planned Parenthood began issuing its Margaret Sanger Awards annually to honor individuals of distinction in recognition of excellence and leadership in furthering reproductive health and reproductive rights. However, the organization very quietly and without any fanfare stopped this practice as Black Lives Matter rose to prominence. It would have been seen as the height of hypocrisy to have the liberal-backed domestic terror group that attacked white America connected to Sanger, a Democrat darling who wanted to exterminate blacks. In fact, the last recipient of the award listed on the website is Dr. Willie Parker in 2015. Then it just quietly disappeared. Parker was an abortionist known for his contentious claims that his Christian faith influenced his work. He was accused of sexual assault in 2019, which he denied, but he still resigned from all of his professional positions in 2020. Other recipients of the Margaret...
What does that have to do with what? What does that have to do... What they have to do with what?
Sanger would include House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and actresses Jane Fonda and Katharine Hepburn. Margaret Sanger was one of the few women to be given an honorific title and inducted into the Ku Klux Klan. and exalted by none other than Adolf Hitler and Dr. Joseph Goebbels.
But as we just read, she opposed the Klan. She showed up at the meetings, but she opposed what they stood for. And all she was showing up to do was to pass more rights on to women to be able to have control over their bodily autonomy. That's what it said. I don't know, like, that could be wrong too. You know, I don't know, but that's what it said.
She was friends with the racist Democratic President Woodrow Wilson, Democratic fundraiser, and automobile maker Henry Ford, who was also friends with Adolf Hitler, and a rabid anti-Semite and hater of black Americans. Margaret Sanger's rabid racism, anti-Semitism, and violent suggestions on eliminating all non-whites from American society endeared her to the eugenics crowd. She wanted an all-white, healthy, intelligent society built upon the concept.
Guys, he said that she was friends with him. There's no solid evidence Margaret Sanger was friends with Henry Ford or President Woodrow Wilson, though they were all prominent figures in the early 20th century and shared involvement in many different ways with some of the controversial ideas with eugenics. Margaret Sanger and Henry Ford was famously anti-Semitic and publicly and all that. Let me see. So friendships, there's no proof that they were ever friends. This is getting strange, y'all.
Concept of racial eradication years before Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party were even a thought. In 1934, the Nazi Party adopted her radical positions, with Goebbels saying, "Margaret Sanger is the best National Socialist in America."
Did Joseph Goebbels say Margaret Sanger is the best National Socialist in America? Let's keep going.
In fact, the September 15, 1935 Nuremberg laws...
No, Joseph Goebbels never said that Margaret Sanger was the best National Socialist in America. The quote was fabricated and not supported by any historical evidence or official records. What we know, Joseph Goebbels was Hitler's prime... where the rumors come from. Some modern critics of Planned Parenthood or abortion rights have repeated the claim in books and social media and online videos. That's why you gotta ask people for sources. So...
classified races according to an insane chart drafted by Dr. Wilhelm Stuckart and Dr. Friedrich Kritzinger. The official name was the Reich Citizenship Law and the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor. These laws embodied many of the racial theories underpinning Nazi ideology, which they adapted from Margaret Sanger. These laws could provide the legal framework for the systematic persecution of Jews in Germany, who at that time were deemed a race and not a religion, and the eugenics behind them were taken from the world of Sanger. In fact, her theories and opinions influenced men like SS Captain Dr. Josef Mengele, the Beast of Auschwitz, and his associates, Dr. Karl Klauberg, Dr. Hertha Oberhäuser, Hitler's personal physician Dr. Karl Brandt, just to name a few. When Hitler authorized the Action T4 euthanasia program to murder the handicapped, mentally ill, and other undesirables from German society, the doctors and nurses were given the program directly from Margaret Sanger's own philosophy. On August 18, 1939, the Reich Ministry of the Interior circulated a decree requiring all physicians, nurses, and midwives to report newborn infants and children under the age of 3 who showed signs of severe mental or physical disability. The man who started the program was Dr. Karl Brandt, and they were disguised as children's clinics and advertised that they would treat their abnormalities and infirmities. In fact, they were death centers, where the children were quietly killed and the cause of death misrepresented as by other means, such as pneumonia, tuberculosis, etc. Dr. Brandt himself claimed that Sanger's methods were most effective and, if performed correctly, are ingenious. In Sanger's own words, she peddled racism, eugenics, contraception, abortion, while demonstrating a visceral hatred for children, parenthood, marriage, and the Catholic Church. The following quotes are directly from Margaret Sanger's own writings and interviews. 1. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. 2. A marriage license shall in itself give husband and wife only the right to a common household and not the right of parenthood. 3. All of our problems are the result of overbreeding among the working class. Knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. It's general, though prudent, practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. 4. Blacks, soldiers, and Jews are a menace to the human race. Number 5. The masses of Negroes, particularly in the South, still breed carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit. Number 6. Birth control appeals to the advanced radical because it is calculated to undermine the authority of the Christian churches. I look forward to seeing humanity free someday of the tyranny of Christianity, no less than capitalism. Number 7. Every single case of inherited defect, every malformed child, every congenitally tainted human being brought into this world is of infinite importance to that poor individual. But it is scarcely less important to the rest of us and to all of our children who must pay in one way or another for these biological and racial mistakes. Number 8. It now remains for the United States government to set a sensible example to the world by offering a bonus or a yearly pension to all obviously unfit parents who allow themselves to be sterilized by harmless and scientific means. Margaret Sanger, the woman heralded by the Democrats and left-wing ideologues in the United States for her positions on women's reproductive rights, always failed to include her genocidal positions on ethnic cleansing. She died on September 6, 1966 in Tucson, Arizona. But Margaret Sanger was not alone. The late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in a New York Times interview, "Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of." In Elle magazine, Ginsburg also stated that poor people should have ready access to abortions because it makes no sense as a national policy to promote birth only among poor people. In 2015, out of $1.29 billion in total revenue, $553.7 million came from the government reimbursing Planned Parenthood for their services. In 2020, Planned Parenthood performed 383,460 abortions, the highest number of abortions it has yet reported, and an increase of nearly 28,600 from the previous year. And in the United States, the abortion rate for black women is almost 5 times that for white women. In July 2020, Planned Parenthood quietly removed Margaret Sanger's name from its headquarters in Manhattan, New York. Obviously, the times had caught up with Margaret Sanger. Thank you for watching Forgotten History.
Yeah, a lot of that he said was completely misconstrued. And like, to be honest with you, like, damn, like, it's crazy. Like, we were researching it. We were Googling it as we were going. Not Googling it, but we chat GPT and it's, we gotta fact check those sources too. But yeah, I mean, that I don't know. Like, if it's true, it's true. If it's not, I'll definitely do some more research on it. But some of those quotes by Margaret Sanger, I know were misconstrued. One of them where she was talking about the black population. What she was trying to get at, and she is correct about, is that there's a lot of breeding in the black population where they've been limited to so many resources where it comes to education, all kind of things like that. That the breeding is a little. I don't want to say breeding. That's fucked up to say, but it is fucked up to say. But that's just the language of the time. But the fact that we were having so many kids was a complicated and scary thing at the time because we had lack of access to resources. So she was trying to say in the defense of what we don't have, and that we kind of have to slow down on that process because we don't have the resources to be able to do that. That's what she was implying. But I see how that could be misconstrued or took it in any way. But anyways, I'm out, y'all. Y'all tell me what you think in the comments. Peace.